Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Darren Barnett and I'm a member of the Royal Fellowship at Woodcroft in Adelaide. And I've just got a presentation I've put together about the novel coronavirus that's causing a lot of distress these days. And this presentation was initially done at our Woodcroft meeting today, and at the request of our principal pastor, Pastor Paul Noble, we're re-recording this so that it can be spread out further for other people to hear what we think is going on, and for us as a church to be clear that we're trying to set up a situation where we're part of helping with the solution to this problem. So we'll start talking about novel coronavirus, which is COVID-19. And I guess what is it and where does it come from? Well, it's a new variant of a common cold virus that we've all seen for quite a few years, and we've probably all had a coronavirus at some stage. Probably started from a bat, and the first time we saw this virus was in the city of Wuhan in China, and that was in December last year. And very quickly from December to now, it's moved across most countries in the world and is causing a lot of distress and a lot of strain on health systems and changing the way people live and having a lot of effects on places like our church fellowship. So talking about how it's spread, which obviously is very important for deciding how we can prevent catching this. The main way this virus is spread is respiratory droplets. So if you're far enough away from somebody, your risk of getting this virus is a lot less. And if you wash your hands, your risk is a lot less. It can also live on a surface for a long time, so it's quite important to be aware of what that surface has been doing and whether you need to wash your hands before you touch your face again. As for how infectious this virus is, there are still studies going on to try and determine this, but we know that the incubation, so that's the time from you being exposed to the virus to the time that it takes for you to show symptoms, is between 2 and 14 days, with most people being unwell by the 5th day. Unfortunately, for this virus, people can actually be quite infectious before they show that they're unwell, and up to 50% of people who catch this virus will infect somebody else before they show any symptoms themselves. And without containment, more than one person will catch the virus from each person who is sick, and the current best estimate is that it's between 2 and 4 people will catch the virus from every person who's unwell, which is why we're moving to a containment strategy where the most important part is social isolation. So if we have a look at this picture on the other side of the slide, you can see Australia is currently sitting right in the middle of the pack, and the way they've set this slide up is that from the date that a country got to 100 cases, they then tracked from that day onwards how many more people catch the infection. And it's not even how many more people catch the infection, it's how many people have we detected with the infection, which is obviously not going to be everyone who is sick. And you can see, and I'm sure that everyone knows, that Italy has been very unfortunate, and the virus has got so far through their country that they're ending up in some social collapse from this virus. We can see that countries that have done very well at preventing this from happening are places like Singapore and Hong Kong. And obviously Australia is trying to work out how to set up a system that's close to what Singapore and Hong Kong achieve. And I guess to do this, we have to decrease how many people get sick. And given, as I've discussed, we can't actually tell always who is sick and who is not, we have to have a different strategy. And it's probably worthwhile, given that we're now in our second pandemic for the decade, talking about 2009, 2010, when we had the swine flu pandemic, and comparing what happened with that virus to what's happened with this one. So with swine flu, you actually get sick fairly quickly. So there's less time where you're slightly unwell and moving around and giving it to other people. Whereas with this virus, and particularly for the under 40s and especially for children, you sometimes can't even pick that you're sick. So we've got many more people moving around. The infectiousness is probably about the same, and depending on your age group, the death rate's not hugely different, but if you're elderly or have other risk factors, then this virus is far worse. So we can see that it's quite a different thing, which is why, for the first time in my memory, the governments are doing different things to try and change what happens. This slide is not very much fun, and it talks about how many people are going to die from this. And if you're over 80, and especially if you're over 80 with something else wrong with you, then your risk of death is extreme. At the other end, if you're a child, or you're a young parent, or under 40 in particular, your risk of death is very low. But then other medical conditions change this. So what should we do? Well, I guess this is coming from a Christian and was a presentation for a Christian audience. So we trust the Bible and wanted to read out a scripture from Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. So what we're taking from this scripture is that this is what we're living with. Currently we have the virus doing the rounds, and we all have a responsibility to trust that God's got his hand in this situation and that he'll actually direct us in what to do. So with that in mind, we look at the two issues that are most important, which are quarantine and social isolation. And Leviticus chapter 13, verse 46 says, all the days wherein the plague is in him, he shall be unclean. He is unclean, he shall dwell alone, without the camp shall his dwelling be. So with this virus, as I've already said, we sometimes can't tell who's sick and who's not. And so it might be me, it might be you who's unwell. If we keep our distance from each other, then we're both safe. And the biggest bit of this presentation is to remind everyone, and particularly churchgoers who we're pretty close to each other and we often like to have a chat, we need to stay at least 1 metre apart. And the recommendation for 1 metre may well change soon to further apart than 1 metre. The second thing we see in the Bible is in the book of Leviticus chapter 15, and it says, and whomsoever he that hath the issue toucheth, without having rinsed his hands in water, he shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the even. And the earthen vessel, which he that hath the issue toucheth, shall be broken, and every vessel of wood shall be rinsed in water. Obviously, there's one important detail here. Our hands are the most infective part of our body. And if you want to make sure that you're safe moving around, your hands need to be clean. So I don't think we want to go breaking everything we touch. I think it's much simpler if we just continue to cleanse our hands. But you've got to remember that you have to cleanse your hands before you touch your face or before you eat. And the times people will make a mistake with this are the times yesterday I filled my car with petrol and I got back in my car. So if the petrol nozzle had this virus on it, now my steering wheel and door handle have the virus on it. And it's those sort of mistakes that will end up catching us out. If you go to the supermarket, then you need to wipe down the trolley. You need to be thinking ahead of making sure that your hands and whatever your hands have touched between the last time you cleaned them are thought of as having the virus on them. So how can we all help? If you can see here that we have a slide which shows a very nasty looking red hill and a much nicer looking blue hill. Basically what's happened in Italy is there's been too many infections too quickly and the health system hasn't been able to cope. So people who with good supportive care would have lived will be dying at the moment due to this infection. So in Australia, the government's trying to move faster and cut down the number of infections. We're not expecting to stop this virus. This is going to be a way of life for quite a while now, almost certainly many months. And what we're actually trying to do is have a smaller number of infections per day so that the health system can continue functioning and that we as a community receive very good health care and can get through this in one piece. So final thoughts for you is we're talking about something which is going to produce a lot of fear and a lot of panic. And in the mainstream media, there has been a lot of fear and a lot of panic. And even in my doctor colleagues, a lot of people are very worried. I don't think we need to be fearful, but we definitely need to be careful, and we should be prayerful about this situation. And if we finish with a thought from the psalmist, Psalm 91, verse 1, he that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of Jehovah, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. For he will deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. So I'd like to thank everyone for listening today. And if anyone's listening to this who's not part of the Revival Fellowship, we'd like to welcome you to look us up online, and you'd be most welcome to get contact with us. You may not be able to attend a meeting currently because we're not sure in the current situation how many meetings we'll be allowed to run, but we'd be most happy to talk to you from wherever you are, in whatever location. If you get in touch with us, then we'll get back to you. Thank you very much.